I want to welcome everybody out to the MasterMind class tonight. We're going to be talking about boundaries. Now, I don't know about you, but boy, sometimes I just really question where the heck I am because I didn't have boundaries established. In fact, I just went through that process with a couple of new clients. I had one client who knew that this had helped her, and I probably worked with her a couple of years ago, a year or two. And so she sent her mother and she sent her sister and said, you need to talk to Tom and you need to figure this out. So anyway, she actually paid for their sessions. How awesome is that, right? And she gave me an earful about all their backgrounds. Well, what happened was that mom just kept calling me. She is continuing to call me. And these are the two people that I wanted to make sure that we got some help for, because I don't have time to answer phone calls when I'm in sessions and things. And so they were kind of getting a little put out that they weren't receiving the attention they thought they should have when they also were not able to pay any money for the sessions. And I thought, well, there's an issue. So obviously I'm allowing myself, and you know, I hate to turn away anybody. And that's why I think it's great that we have healers that are willing to practice on them. And that was one of the reasons that we did that. All right, so let's gonna go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. And we'll slide y'all over here so I can see you. And that's wonderful. Okay, good. So establishing boundaries. And I don't know how this is all gonna go. I do expect you all to give your opinions and help me out a little bit so that we get a well-rounded idea of what boundaries really should be. And I don't have a chart or anything that is going to help us, and we aren't really clearing anything, although you may need to clear yourself when you're setting your boundaries. But let's go ahead and let's get started here. The defining attributes of who you are. So let's go ahead and see what we've got here. I usually have, there it is, right there. So what are boundaries? So I actually went out and I was looking to see what boundaries really considered themselves to be. How's that? Does that make sense? What the actual definition is. And what we got was guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, or permissible ways for other people to behave towards them and how they respond when someone passes those limits. And I thought that was a pretty good description. They are built out of a mix of conclusions, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, past experiences, and social learning. So in other words, everybody could have different kinds of boundaries. Depends on what you are willing to accept and what you are able to handle, various things in your life. So I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind. So we're looking for guidelines. We're working for rules or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave towards them and how they will respond when someone passes those limits. So a lot of times we don't even think about this when we first start doing this. And we just go in because we just want clients. We want people to come to us, and we want to be able to help everybody, because really that's what we're doing, right? We want to be helpful people. I always think about what I used to say all the time, and I still believe this. I've always wanted to be a resource person so that someone can come to me and I'd be able to help them. Not only does it make me feel good, but it actually helps somebody else, and it helps me too, knowing that I can accomplish that. So many times in my life, you know, when you first learn about something, you want to share it, and we don't have the depth yet to do the full work, and so we feel like we're inadequate. So we're constantly saying, well, let me try this, let me try that. So that kind of gives us an idea what the boundaries are that we're talking about. Of course, there can be other kinds of boundaries, but I'm mainly worried about or concerned about the ones that, you know, we deal with when we talk about with people. And it gets crazy if you don't have them. So what happens if you don't have them? Now, I'm putting this down here. What happens if you don't have it? Here's a great example. Here's a beautiful wall that's been broken down. Okay, now that's wide open, and we'll talk about this in just a sec. you, with undeclared boundaries, this is how you usually feel. You feel taken for granted. You have sometimes anger due to the violations of imaginary lines. Now, this is undeclared boundaries. I need to clarify that. So if you have a client, or if you have a person in your life even, and we've all experienced this, a lot of times it happens when you get married and suddenly you have a mother-in-law and you sit there and you go, where's the boundaries? And you're afraid to say anything or be able to establish it. But when you don't have a declared boundary, you're going to feel taken for granted, and the client's not going to know. They're not, and you're going to have some anger due to violations. Enable those that cross the line continually. You know, we talk about, I have a client who is very, very concerned about her family. And she has a son who's a grown man who is having a lot of problems personally. And yet she feels obligated to provide money and different things to try and help the family, because she's concerned about the family, because he's not supporting the family. And she's gone to people and they've talked to her and they said, well, this is enabling him to continue to help. And I've seen that in a lot of different clients. I had one client suffering from a cancer, and yet her son still, and this was an older woman, there was still a situation where she was trying to provide for him because he hadn't grown up yet. And he was a single man. He was still living off of mom. We're talking, he's like in the 40s, almost to the 50s. And he was still doing that type of a situation there. And so that was, and she like, well, but if I don't do it, he'll suffer. Well, maybe that's something that needs to happen, but she had no boundaries. And so what happens when you don't have boundaries? You set yourself up for abuse. And isn't it interesting that when you are trying to help somebody else and it goes bad for them, they blame you because you didn't help them enough? Ever heard that one before? I see a lot of nodding heads there. So that's one of the things, because they didn't understand what was going on. So codependency, your needs are low priority and their needs are much higher. And a lot of times we do that to ourselves. We put our needs on the back burner. I remember one mother, and of course she's a grandmother, and she would always, all through their lives, the kids growing up, she always gave them all of her food. You know, if they were hungry, oh, here, just take mine. You just take this or whatever. Extra piece of meat, extra potatoes, whatever it was. And she actually became sick because she had starved herself nutrition-wise, and later on she suffered greatly from that particular situation. Now, what did the kids do? Nothing, because they didn't realize that their mother was sacrificing for them. So to them, it was like, ugh, mom always does that. Here, I can get some extra food. Yeah, hey, mom, can you get me some more? Oh, sure, here, dear, just take this. I don't need this. And you can really cause some damage to yourself if you do these types of things. So others expecting you to live up to their expectations. Well, that happens a lot too. Now, I may be stepping on some toes, but you know what? I've been there. I've been the one who had the codependency. I know that there was times when I just knew that my mom would be there to help. There was, and it got to the point when finally nobody had any money, then we would go, okay, so now we have to take care of ourselves. And you know what? We all grew. It was, so here's a classic example. So I'm married for the first time for 20 years. And my children turned 16. What do you usually get when you turn 16? You get a driver's license, right? That's right. I got people up there steering here. That's correct. And in my particular situation, in my marriage, my then wife said, well, they need to have a car when they turn 16. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I didn't have a car when I turned 16. I had to I was driving grandma's car. In fact, that was the first car. And I didn't get that car until I was driving away to college. And it was an old 65 Buick Special. So it wasn't new. It was my own because I had finally gotten the use of the car. But my children, my first daughter, she actually did really well. We got the car for her. She took care of it. She cleaned it. She made sure that it was in top shape. Always looked good. And we thought, okay, this might be happening again. So our son goes ahead and he turns 16. And once again, and this is unbeknownst to me, this is my ex trying to make sure everything's right for him. They go out and they find the truck. And I'm going, this is a nice truck. I'm driving a $500 Honda. I should be driving this truck. He should be driving the $4,200 truck. It was a used truck. It was lifted, had nice big tires on it. And the crazy thing is I allowed it to happen. And so he gets his car, or his truck, I should say. She goes, needs to have a CD player in it. So she puts in a 6 CD changer in there. And then she says, oh, now it might be broken into. I need to put an alarm system on. I'm thinking, I'm still driving the $500 Honda. And I'm putting miles on that sucker. It was good to me, but there was nothing fancy about this thing. And what does he do? He gets the truck. He gets it on the day that he gets his license, on his 16th birthday. He goes out. It isn't a month. And I'm going, what the heck happened to the front of your truck? The lights broke. He goes, well, I don't know. I hit the neighbor's mailbox. Well, how the heck did you hit the neighbor's mailbox with your truck? He says, well, I was putting in a CD. I'm going, okay. So I wait and I watch. And I said, what's he going to do? Nothing. He drives it messed up on the front. A few months go by and he does it to the other side. And this is in the morning and he's on his way to school. He never took responsibility for that truck. He was given the truck. He was, we enabled him because we didn't make him work at that time. Oh, they're going to high school. They don't need to put any time in. They don't need to work. Now, everyone, those are the 2 older kids. I had 4 at that time. So then I went through my wonderful, my divorce experience where I lost pretty much everything. And nobody had money. And my ex goes down to Arizona. She takes the 2 daughters. Now, when they turn 16, there's no money. So what does my daughter do? She goes out, she gets a job. She goes and she buys her car. She's out there fixing the window. I mean, this is my engineer daughter. She goes out there and she makes this car work. And she really appreciated it. Now, the next one, because there was no place to, no money still, she just waited until she was 18. And then she went and she finally got her license. And they were fine. Nobody died. There was a difference in boundaries and difference in the ways that I allowed things to happen. I would say my term of me in my first marriage was wishy-washy. So everybody took advantage of me. I felt like I was there as a meal ticket. I didn't think anybody really cared about me, but yet unless they needed money, and my wife didn't work, and yet I would come home and I'd be on these trips to make money. I come home and they got all the designer stuff. The kids had everything. They never really did without. And I would hear stories from other people. Boundaries. I set myself up for abuse. I set myself up for codependency. And I wasn't meeting the expectations. And so they were mad at me. And I'm going, what the heck? Okay, does this sound familiar to anybody? Anybody who's been through a divorce, they can experience that. Okay, this is what I found, is that kids test your boundaries. You notice that? When they're little kids, they will do whatever they can to see where their boundaries really are. And depending on the parents, and you sit there and you go later on in life, you go, what the heck happened to those kids? Why are they so crazy? Because they had no boundaries before. And you find out that the parents didn't keep boundaries going either. Think about the schools. Back when I went to school, and this is one of those stories, when I went to school, they had a hack paddle this long, and the hack paddle was if you got out of line, you going out there and the shop teacher would come down and he had holes drilled in his, and he would say, okay, grab your ankles, and he'd wind up and whack. Well, you know what? There was a lot less problem in school at that particular time because there was consequences. And one of the things that we have nowadays, now the teachers are afraid to say anything because it comes back to the teachers. And the parents support the kids. So it gets kind of crazy. Once again, a lack of boundaries. So you got kids that are testing boundaries, but what are they taught? They're the same that with at work. You know, you go and you hire, I don't know if any of you have ever hired people. A lot of times there are those out there that will test your boundaries. What can they get away with? When I had my restaurant, I had not employees, but customers that would come and say, hey, did you know that your employees are stealing food from you? I'm going, not my employees. Why would they do that? They go, well, my neighbor bought some of your food from one of your employees. And I'm like going, wow. There's a lot of things that can happen when we don't have boundaries. So here's something, this is what I found, that when we are working in this industry that we're in right now with healing and we're helping people, the biggest thing that you have to worry about is your time constraints. You need to be able to say, this is my session, and I don't care if it's 20 minutes long or if it's an hour and a half. You need to keep them within the boundaries that you have. I give myself a little leeway with 15 minutes on either side. As long as I've got a little bit of time to reset, I'm good to take another session. And you may need to go, and this requires you to do a little pre-planning so that you know how long you need for your session. But if you've got somebody who's constantly late, I don't know if you've had that before. A lot of times, oh, it's okay. I'll just stretch into my lunch, and we'll keep the session right. Or last-minute cancellations. Now, I'm really lax at this, folks, so I'm really bad. So I'm putting these things up here for you to learn from me, too, is that I'll sit there and I'll look, and a lot of times, if I have a last-minute cancellation, they'll just go on my deal and cancel. And I look at it and go, oh, I get a nap or something like that. So I don't worry about that too much. It gives me a little, but if you're hurting and you have only, the other day I had 6 appointments. I ended up doing 3. 2 of them rescheduled and 1 of them canceled. Now I've gotten to the point where most people realize that when the time comes and it's on the dot, I mean, for me, when I go someplace, I always try and be there 5 minutes early. But I don't want somebody 5 minutes early with this. So I try and set when it's time, you call me. So I know you're there. After 5 minutes, I'll hunt you down. If I can't find you within that 5 minutes, then I send a little text and saying, I'm sorry I missed you. I guess you'll have to reschedule. Now, I'm more lenient than a lot of people because some people will say, okay, you blew it. I'm sucking the money out of you, and you got to handle it next time. I do talk with them. And I had one couple that they would do that to me the last minute. They'd always disappear, or they wouldn't pay. Usually it was the not showing up. And I'm like, what the heck? I said, you know what? You just cost me $200 because you weren't there. Or I guess it's $120. $200 because it was 2 of them that did it. And I would tell them, I said, I'm already giving you a discount, which is another boundary that I learned about, and you're taking advantage of that, and you're not respecting my time. And I had to sit them down and talk to them and then say, hey, this is the deal. So now when they call, they're on time. They pay their money beforehand, because otherwise I was like trying to drag it out a week later. And I don't like to do invoices. I don't invoice people. In fact, when I ask them at the end of the session, I go ahead and do the work. At the end of the session, I say, I haven't seen a payment. Have you already made a payment on this? And they will say, oh, no, I couldn't figure out how to do it. I said, well, let's walk you through it. And I'll take time to walk them through. And they says, well, I can just do it through you. I said, well, I'd appreciate it if you do it, because I want them to learn how to do it for next time. And I show them. I said, you go here, you click on this, and it says payment. You put in the amount, and you just go, oh, I can do that. I'm going, perfect. And usually within a couple minutes, I will have it in my bank or in my PayPal account. But if you don't do that, I have, and I work with those people. It's uncomfortable sometimes to start off talking about money when you have new clients. I do the work first, and then I come back. But if they have lacked of a prompt payment, or they haven't paid for something, sometimes I'll say, you know, we got this one couple. I said, I'm not doing the session unless I see a payment come through. Well, but we're going to do it. I said, well, when you do, we'll reschedule for another one. Doesn't take but 1 or 2 times, and they are there. So, but it was hard for me to do that. Okay, so other things they can do. Their money gets redirected to those that have boundaries. Ever see that happen? Well, let me explain what that means. So you're working with them, and I cut them a deal. I mean, I went ahead and I discounted it. I said, okay, so this is how much. And I got these phone calls, like the one I just received, but I just don't have any money. I just don't have any money to work with. And I'm thinking, okay, so I sucked up to one time where I gave them a package of 4. And I thought, no, I'm doing good. And then I find out later, the same person's doing this to other healers. She's getting a crap load of free sessions. And I never could get any money out of that person. And I thought, okay, we don't need to do this anymore. I said, I have healers, that need practice, and I would redirect them. But it's interesting how they can, and you say, oh, we just came back from Jamaica. Oh, we just came back from a trip. And I'm going, well, wait a sec. I just gave you a deal for a session, and how come, is it just because Tom is willing to let things slide a little bit or get a better deal? Now, if you went to the doctor in a clinic, is he going to give you a deal? Oh, heck no. And he's going to charge you for every single time you've been there. So one of the things you need to remember is that this is a business and there is a professional atmosphere, but we have to impose that. We have to get it. It's gotten a lot better. I used to, my first year, I feel like I did half of my sessions for free. I was out there trying, and at that point I was doing my first session for free. And I'm going, oh, what an idiot. Now I'm still questioning if I charge enough, I'm okay with it. I charge $65 for that first session. But then again, you got to be good with where you are. And this is where your muscle testing can help you too. Okay, impose upon your personal space unwanted calls or texts on their demand. So I had that situation happen a couple different times where people would say, they just felt like they could just call me. And I don't mind. If I see somebody new, I'll talk to them. I never want to, if this is a practitioner or one of my people that I've set up, or even one of my clients that's in a bad way, no problem. You can call me. I prefer text. I just tell everybody I prefer text. But then you have those clients that, or that want to be clients, or they just start sending you and expecting answers. And I'm going, I'm in church right now. This is Sunday. I have a day off. And if it's an emergency, yes, I tell people, text me. I can usually do the work right there in church or step out in the hallway and do the work quickly, and we're good. I'm done. They're appreciative. They appreciate that. And I don't usually charge for that. But then there are 1 or 2 people that spoil things for other people. So does that make sense so far, y'all? Okay, I know I'm just yapping away here, so I appreciate the feedback by seeing your faces. Okay, so your goals are put on hold while they get attention. Ever have that happen? My father-in-law was a fantastic man. The first time around, I have a great father-in-law now too, but my first 20 years, he lived right across the next house over. And if I needed anything, bless his heart, he would come and he would help. And I would take the help. I was always willing to have him drop everything and come and help me and my family. And he loves my family. He loves his daughter and his kids and the grandkids. And yet I go back and I look back on that and I go, man, I was really selfish. He had stuff that he needed to do. How many times did I go help him? I didn't. But because I was always on the receiving end of things, I didn't think about that. And his stuff got put off all the time. And he would spend all day. I mean, it was his house we were living in. We were renting from him. But still, it was always something that he would just take time and he would take care of it. So be aware of that. As we get older, what goes around comes around. And you might be experiencing that later in your life, but you don't have to. Okay, a man without borders. Now, this one kind of can hit home a little bit. Not meant to be political here, but if you don't have borders, you're never going to be separate. And I say like a country. You think about it. If your country does not have a border, then really what is to keep them out? What is to keep them in? I'm saying you don't need a wall, but you do need a border to be able to say, this is my country and this is my space. And that, and like I put here, if you have no borders, you're not separate or unique. Now, I think it was Denmark that brought a lot of refugees in. Now, Denmark's unique. It's known for a lot of different things. You know, their culture. Germany, same thing. You know, you got your beautiful streets. I mean, they're just spotless. Always amazed me how clean the German streets were. And then you have your street food and the, you know, the dirndls, the dresses, and the lederhosen for the guys, and you have the music and everything. And then they let all these refugees in. And it was willy-nilly. They could come in and they just, pretty soon, now they expect, they feel that it's their right, it's now their country, and they're changing the complete flavor of the country. It's no longer the same. The Germans are not happy living there because of what happened. And that was because the borders were not maintained. So you can lose your complete identity if you don't have you know, a way to say, this is me and this is you. It's left to the whim of others, or who conquest or have other plans for you. We'll talk about that just in a minute in the mental illness section. Your goals are weak or non-existent and don't have real purpose because you don't know how to set them up. You don't know what you want in your life, is what I'm saying, is that if you have no borders and no goals, then it's pretty hard to keep other people from, or expect others to be respecting of something that you don't even know what you have. Does that make sense? Okay. I want you to be aware. I'm not saying that, you know, like in countries, I don't care about the walls or things like that. I mean, I have my own opinions about that, but it is really blatant when you see the loss of identity with some of these countries. You know, I'm half German. So Germany, I lived there. I have a big love for that country and for the uniqueness of it. But it's not the same country anymore. And that's the concern that I have. Here we go. You become invisible or open for abuse. Well, if you're not managing your borders, if you're not worrying about somebody's going to come through and they are going to be able to change your entire life. They will tell you what needs to happen and you become invisible. And nothing you thought was yours really is anymore because, you know what? Nothing says it's there. It's open. There used to be a game that was called, let's see, what's it called? It was a Unix game. All you had were letters and, I think of it here in a minute. It was like Dungeons and Dragons type thing. But anyway, you go down through levels and you get to this store. And the idea was to try and get a dog along the way. Because the dog would run in the store and he would steal things out and bring them out. And as soon as he dropped them at the doorway, you could pick them up and they were now yours. And it didn't matter. And if I tried to go in, then of course the storekeeper, who was a former mercenary, would beat the crap out of you and you might die. So the best way to get that was to have the little dog go in and just bring things out. Anything that ended up in the doorway was fair game. Same thing happens when you don't have your borders or you lend things out. Ever lend something out and I'm going to remember that, and they don't bother to bring it back. And then pretty soon, they don't even remember who they borrowed it from. And you don't even remember who you lent it to. And now you're in a situation where you're like, I'm missing something and I don't know where it is or where it went. So boundaries, that's one thing there. Okay, mental illness. We were talking about this. I've got a book, now that most of my books are out. Let me see if I've got it here handy. Oh, where is it? Oh, it's not in that batch. It's called Why Does He Do That? And I'm looking, why does he do that? There it is right there. And it's by Lundy Bancroft. And I thought, well, it started out a little slow, but it talks about narcissism. Narcissism is a big deal inside the minds of angry and controlling men. And I always get the audio. So it took me a long time, a couple trips to Las Vegas, and I was able to go through that book. And it was amazing to me that there are different kinds of people who try to purposely take advantage of others. And I think it's important, and most of us have known narcissistic people. You may not have identified them exactly, but you've had that situation. And women are usually the targets of these men. And I think that I might have even qualified as a target for my first wife, was because I didn't have my boundaries set. And she was very controlling. And she could pretty well manipulate me, whatever, and even make me feel like it was my fault and that it was my problem. So you need to be aware that there are situations out there that can happen that way. And how does that happen? They worm their way in because we're not maintaining our borders, our boundaries, maintaining what we believe in. So it's really, really important when we look at this, and you can't always feel like you can get out of it. That's the problem. Sometimes you feel stuck and you have to have somebody else's help to do that. That's where it does make a difference in doing sessions and things. But just be aware that this is, it's out there. Borderline personality disorder, tendency for loved ones of people with borderline personality disorder to slip into the caretaker roles, placing the loved one's issues above their own. Now, remember, I was talking about that just a minute or two ago. The mother that was making sure that it's more important for my children to have this food. Now, they didn't need the extra food, and she needed the nutrition, but she gave it up because she felt this way, and she put herself into that mode. You know, when we have, if you're using the body code and you get to the point where in the brain, let's see, make sure I do this right. It's under toxins. Let's just look at it real quick. I want to show you this. Let me just bring this over. And we will go to the body code. And so, oh no, it's in the systems, I think. No, it's not. Maybe it is. Yes, it is. It's in the nervous system. So we go to the nervous system here. And we go to peripheral, and we go to the autonomic nervous system. So now the autonomic is set up with three different sections. You got the parasympathetic, which takes over during relaxation, digestion, sleep, especially after a nice turkey dinner. And then you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the system that takes over during the fight or flight reaction. Panic, fear, high levels of activity, etc. So not frequently, every once in a while, I get somebody who's stuck in that mode. And they only show those two words, fight or flight. And they're actually four. There is the fight, flight, freeze, like deer in the headlights, and then there's the fawn. And when you got the fawn mode is exactly what we were talking about there, is when they place somebody else's needs in front of theirs. And that is up, look at that. It's a malfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So it's a real thing, and it's actually in a disorder situation. So you need to be aware that's one kind of disorder that you can fall into by yourself, or you can be, working with somebody who has that issue. Now, those people usually don't realize that they have that. They'll say, oh, no, I just need to take care of my family. I just need to do this. And then you have to practically beat them over the head and say, stop it. You're enabling these people for what you're doing. Where are your boundaries? Make sure they understand. People will not create boundaries unless they feel that they need the boundaries. Does that make sense? So sometimes it's an educational thing. Narcissistic, we talked about those guys out there. Basically, your values and boundaries are often challenged by narcissists who have poor opinions of themselves and who think of you as an extension of themselves. Basically, you belong to them. And because you belong, you become a property. So that's why they don't like it when if you are in a narcissistic situation and you are trying to develop a friendship with another, if you're a woman and you're trying to develop a friendship with another woman who sees the narcissism in your husband, he's not going to like that because, hey, no. We don't want any collusion here to try and mess up what I've got going. He will make you feel like, if you don't clean up after everybody, then you're just worthless. That's your job. You should be able to, do these things. So that's one of the things. Then you got your attention deficit or bipolar disorders. And once again, it's all about them. It's not about you. So I'm throwing you a life ring, you might say, saying, hey, be aware that this is going on because this will change your life if you can get these things under control. And it can happen to guys as well as to women. Okay, so these are the emotions that I feel are, and there's probably more, but I threw these out here because I want you to look at them. There's what, 3, 6, 9, 10. Okay, I guess there's 20 of them here, I think. Yes, there's 20 of them. So can you see them? Nods of head. Okay, I'll go through them real quick in case you got it on a phone or something. Anger, being taken granted of, unsupported, peeved, miserable, lost, abandoned, betrayed, insecurity, effort unreceived. You can never do enough, right? Depressed, defensiveness, discouragement, creative insecurity, wishy-washy, overwhelmed, worthless, unworthy, indignant, and shame. All of these are things that we release people from. And yet, if you don't have your boundaries set where they need to be, you can be experiencing this because they don't understand what you need. I don't think people, I should rephrase that. I think usually most people will not take advantage of you intentionally unless you allow them to do it. Does that make sense? Because they don't know where to stop and they go, wow, I can get this for free? That's, it's the old saying about men and sex. Well, men think about sex pretty much all the time. And women, they think about, let's make this a great relationship. And they talk about, why buy the cow when you get the milk for free type thing. Okay, so there are boundaries that are set, and when they are not being followed, then that makes a difference there. Okay, I'm just using that as an example. I'm just throwing it out there to try and help illustrate what we're talking about here. Okay, personal boundaries operate in two different directions. It affects both people, affecting both incoming and outgoing interactions between people, referred to as protection and containment functions. So remember that these are good things for you to have, and it will help you to become your own person. This will, we talk about in the body code. Let me just show that real quick again. Oh, actually, it's not in the body code. It's in my stuff. Under the, let's see, I didn't bring that up. In the entity chart, I have a spot there that talks about archangels. And usually an archangel is an angel that people will, they'll pray to archangel or ask for help from the archangel, or they'll receive help. When I see archangel in that particular chart, I'm seeing it and recognizing it as you become your own archangel. And that's where you're going, because you know what? You're in a situation where nobody may be willing to save you, or you're not in the situation where you can receive help. You have to do it yourself. And that's what you're doing by creating these boundaries. Okay, what else we got? Setting boundaries. Now, this is your exercise that I recommend, is that you sit down and you write out things like, what are your likes and your dislikes? Take a look at your life. So what's going on in your life? And say, what ticks me off? What do I like? Now, when a situation is good, what is that situation? When it's bad, what do you not like about it? What are your needs? What are your wants? You sit there and we keep giving out free sessions, and then we say, gosh, I got to pay my rent. And you go, oh, something's got to happen. When I was first putting my restaurant together, a friend of mine who also had a restaurant, he had a great barbecue restaurant. And we were talking one day, and he says, yeah. He says, I was getting ready to get open. And he says, yeah, I remember when I was trying to get open, and I wanted it to be perfect. And I just kept saying, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. My wife finally came to me with the checkbook, and she opened it up. She says, this is what we have. And he goes, oh, it's time to open. And it was at that point he recognized that he needed to get that going. He says, what are the needs? She's in that situation, they needed to start making money instead of spending money. What is a safe distance to keep others? Now, what does that mean? That means when we look at what we want or trying to accomplish, what are you willing to accept? What needs to happen? And a heart wall, for example, a lot of times, I do anyway, we find out how thick the heart wall is. Now, your body is saying that that's the thickness I need to have so that I can be safe from other people. Now, if it feels that it's not adequate and somebody gets through, then the wall's going to increase. It'll go whatever needs to be to keep you at a safe distance. Now, we're not saying to build walls. What we're doing is we're saying we need to, you have a shield usually, but we need to say, what is the distance you need to keep? So in the phone call situation, I would say, okay, I don't receive calls on Sundays. I don't receive calls on after 10 o'clock. I don't receive, calls before 8 o'clock my time. Those are things that you could be at a safe distance. Fortunately, I don't get that many. And so when somebody does get through or somebody does need me, they send me a text and I am able to find it and catch it. I leave my phone downstairs, so I don't always see the texts come through if it's during the night. But I do try to get back with people because they don't abuse it. But if I had somebody constantly calling me, I had somebody the other day was saying that they had a person that they owed money. They had tried to find them before, but had lost all the information. And obviously that person who needed the money came back, and it was a good amount. It was a few $1,000s for a service that she had provided at the time. And it wasn't that this woman didn't want to pay her. It was a matter of she lost the information. He says, well, I'd love to set up a payment plan. Oh, no, I need it all right now. She says, well, it ain't going to happen. I can pay you X amount of dollars every month, and I will be, now that I've got your information, I can make that happen. And then the next day, she made the payment, and then the woman starts harassing her, starts sending her text, starts calling, and she finally had to block the person. She goes, you will get your money, but you are not going to harass me. And at that point, she had to do what she needed to do in order to be safe, and that was block her. Now, there's different ways that we can work with. Once again, this is something that you could do a session and probably repair some stuff. We actually did session on it, and I don't know, I haven't got feedback on that part of it, but it was interesting that the following week when we had another session, she had forgotten about the woman. And I thought, wow, well, that worked, didn't it? So it wasn't something that was constantly affecting her at that point. Can you be flexible, or do certain things need to be rigid? That's important to realize. For me, I'm flexible at this point. Now, if I had, 50 people trying to get a hold of me, I would be much more rigid. I would just flat out get a different phone. I actually carry my same phone that I receive all my calls on and do all my service on, and I don't have to worry about it. I love that the people that I work with are respecting that part of it. Now, if it didn't, I would have to be more rigid and say, okay, this is my work phone and this is my personal phone. But so far, I haven't had to do that. Okay, so what do you need or want in your life? Now here, folks, I know this is the hard part because you actually have to think. You have to think, what is it I want in my life? And then we look at it and we say, well, I want this and this to happen. And then you go, well, it can't happen unless I do this and this and this, or allow certain people into my life. What makes your life worth living, I think, is probably could have been at the top. What is it you really want in your life? Okay, I think we're getting... Oh, I love this one. The Cheshire Cat. Can you see that Cheshire Cat over there? So here's Alice. And he says, if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. The uninformed must improve their deficit or die. In other words, if we don't set something up, you make yourself vulnerable. and let your need guide your behavior. And of course, there's a few other ones over there. He says, but I don't want to go among mad people, said Alice. Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad. How do you know I'm mad, asked Alice. You must be, said the cat. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come. So life is what it is. You know, where are you going? What do you want? Who do you want to be there with? And how comfortable do you want to be? So there's a lot of different aspects. There's financial, mental, spiritual, and emotional. You could take those 4 levels and just work with those. I think we're pretty close here, folks. Examples, yes. So unmute yourself. Give me some opinions. What do you think, folks? That's when they disappear. I just heard somebody disappear.
I think this is a fantastic call. It makes sense, very much so.
Well, I'm glad. We have Australia represented. We also have India represented, and we got a few places.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah, there he is. There's Ricky.
So I have trouble. Difficulty getting money back that I loan. For years I do not get the money back, and I don't know what is the block in me. I'm unable to receive the money I loan so easily. It makes sense that I'm not setting my boundaries, right?
So what were your boundaries when you lent the money? And I think that's the big thing that people need to remember too. What are the expectations that you have? We all expect everybody to pay it back immediately, right? But
right.
If we are willing to say, oh, well, just kind of pay me back as you can, what boundary did we just set? That means that other people can be more important than you. Because if you said, I need this paid back in 2 weeks, or you got a set period of time, otherwise, and you put I don't like to call it a penalty, but there is something that's going to happen if you don't pay me back. At that point, you might say, well, let's see, what have we got that I can use as collateral? And that might be a way to go with that. What kind of exchange of energy? And you're not trying to, you think about a pawn shop. You all understand the concept of a pawn shop? Mm-hmm. Okay, they're willing to lend you money, but you got to give them something of value, which is much more than what they're lending you. And then they're going to charge you interest on top of that. Okay, so you want to buy that back, you gotta buy it back, and you're going to pay more money to get that concept or that back. Now, the pawn shop is the last place somebody's going to go if they want to hang on to that item. Because a lot of times, if you had to pawn it in the first place, there's a real reason that you were really hurting. And I've done that a couple times. And I used to look at it and I go, I had a ring that was given to me in Germany. Beautiful gold ring with some onyx on it. And I was so out and about and just needed the money. I thought, oh, I can come back down here. Or is this something that I can forfeit? Now, I ended up forfeiting that ring. And to this day, because of the emotional attachment that I had to that stupid ring, I felt really, really bad because it was somebody's wedding ring at one time that they gave me. An older woman gave it to me, and I thought, how blessed I am to have this. And then I pawned it. So you need to think about it from both sides. And so if you've got somebody who can't pay you back, banks won't loan you money until you what? Prove that you don't need it, right? Isn't that true? If you can prove that you really don't need this money, we'll lend you some money because they want to be able to get the value back. Now, I'm picking on the money thing, but Ricky, it could be anything. It could be sessions that you're doing for somebody, and that's why it's really important. I will gift some things away because I feel like my time, I can tithe my time. If I give away, I always expect God to pay me back, because if I give a certain amount out there, they say when you tithe, you get 100 times back. And I have been blessed over and over and over because of the sessions that I've done, not from those people, but from other things that came back to me. So that's the thing you got to remember. But so what you're doing, you're asking, what can you do? Well, clearing your session or clearing yourself on that is a big thing. It's like paying for a session. I mean, how much do I charge? All it took for me to charge more was for me to realize that my stuff was valued higher, and I was willing to take, I was willing to take more. Did my session improve? I don't know, probably a little bit over the years, but it's still a value, and I have a tendency to watch other people get paid before I get paid. So I'm trying to change that part of it. Does that make sense? That help any?
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
thank you, Tom.
Yeah. Anything else? Go ahead, David. Have you noticed? Go ahead.
Oh, this is a question that it's about boundaries, but for people like Glenda and her son, Ryan, they're very high-level empaths, and they might want to set a boundary of some sort, but because of their being an empath, a lot of times they'll absorb certain things from other people and not even realize it until all of a sudden they're hurting or something. So I'm not sure, this is maybe a little higher level or a discussion or whatever from what we're talking about, but I know that, you know, Glenda would love to be able to send or to set other boundaries, but how does she do that when it comes to that, you know, kind of a circumstance? Is that a good
Think
question?
about it. What, you know, no, I'm serious. So what is the intent?
Mm-hmm.
So think about, you know, your subconscious will build you a heart wall if it needs to be protected. It will redirect energy if it feels that in order to keep you alive to do something. So do you not think that your subconscious could help damper or filter that empath if you so chose it? Okay. So what you do, and I'm you know, once again, this is, you know, this is me speaking just off the top of my head, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it's just like me being able to do 8-10 sessions a day versus somebody who can only do 3. Now, as I am working on this, I have, and there's nothing wrong with the people that can only do 3, but as they grow into this, they're going to be able to, they're going to find that they can do more and more, but you have to set your boundaries first. You have to say, I am willing to work with people, but I don't want to accept everything that is just coming by me. I had a client, this pops into my head, so I'll share it with you. I taught him how to build shields. How to and you know, we have a pretty set shield. It says, I'm placing a shield on you, it covers you completely, and it's permanent, and I say, and it will keep all the negative energies and entities out of all kinds, but will allow the positive to come and go at will as needed. So that's kind of my set shield. And then I found that one day I was really being pestered by mosquitoes. I hate mosquitoes. I hate it. I was like the target, that they were always coming to me and biting on me. And I'm like, there's got to be. And I tested. I said, can I build a shield against mosquitoes? And the answer came back, why, yes, you can. And I'm going, really? Okay, so let's do this. I said, I want to do a build. I want a shield that I'm creating a shield that protects me from all, I said, biting insects is what I put down there. And then I, you know, tested. Yep, it's in place. I said, good. I said, I want this hooked in with my other shield, so when I say shields up, all of them come up. And then I found that I'm out there around a fire, and I've got some things flying in my face all around me, driving me nuts. They weren't biting me, but they were right in my face. They were landing on me. I said, okay, change of plan. We got rid of the other shield, and I said, this time I want to keep all biting insects 3 feet away from me at all times. Now, if I don't have my shield up, I get bit. And I know my shield's not up when I get a bite. But most of the time, they don't like me anymore. And I thought, how interesting. Can we build shields that we can protect ourselves? Well, of course we can. And it's all done through intention. Your subconscious can do anything. So my answer to you is, I think that we can create a shield, or we could call it a filter. It's testing positive, says we can call it a filter, that would allow you to sense what's going on but not absorb it. How's that?
Yes, I like that a lot.
So you have the sense, and there's information that can pop into your head, and I have that happen all the time, but you're not absorbing their energy completely. Now, when I do a session, I have a tendency to literally, I connect with them, I test, let everything come through me, And like I said, when I first started, I didn't realize that you needed to shield yourself, and I didn't realize you needed to release it. And I got sick for about 3 weeks because I just was sucking everything into me. And then I found out, oh yeah, you gotta clean yourself out. Allow your subconscious to develop that shield and develop that ability to protect you. Somebody want to have a comment?
I was going to say, Tom, I love this idea of shielding ourselves from insects. That's like my favorite thing.
Cool. Well, I was going to tell you, here's the deal about this client, and you need to understand this. So I had this one guy who is just really susceptible to a lot of different energies from people. I keep going over here because this is where I see your faces. It's over on the side of my screen. So it's not right here in the middle. I suppose I could put it out there. In fact, I don't think we need to have a chart up here. Might as well just see you all. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened was he would literally, this is a person who he had a phobia, he had a fear phobia, just really, really bad. Smart kid. And so we were always trying to figure out how do we make it so that he's more confident and that he feels safe. And then on top of that, he would suck everybody else's energies in. And so I showed him how we made the shield, and I told him about the mosquito thing, and everything was fine. And then he comes back about a month later, and they were gone for a little bit, and he came back and he goes, I'm just not feeling anything anymore. And I said, really? I said, what's going on? He says, I don't know. He says, I don't care about anybody in my house. I don't care about people around me. He says, I'm just not feeling anything. I don't feel any emotion at all. And I'm like, wow. So we tested to try and figure out what was going on. And then I'm asking, I feel like, when you're a computer programmer, which I was years and years ago, and you're trying to diagnose it, you're trying to recreate the issue. And so he said, well, tell me what happened when you did this and did this. And I'm testing his body. And suddenly I realized, so wait a minute, did you build some shields? And he goes, yeah, I did. He says, I was so sick of feeling so emotional to everybody, I built a shield against the emotions. I'm going, duh. What did you just say? And I said, he goes, oh. I said, you're not feeling because you set yourself up with a shield to protect yourself from all emotions. And he goes, wow, this really works. I had to tear every single shield down to bear nothing and then rebuild. So you got to be careful how you use your shield. It's like the genie out of the bottle. It listens to every word you say, and he tries to screw you over every single time. Okay, so you got to be careful how that genie listens to the words, because that subconscious is just like Google. It takes it literally. It is. So you have to be careful how you say it. And sometimes you have to test. It goes, is this the right words? Yeah, this is right. This is right. This is correct. Okay, we'll say this. And then you build upon that. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Quietness. Does this make sense to y'all?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you guys do? I know we're at our hour here too, so we need to shut down here. But is there something else that you do for your particular benefit? Ricky, you're off. You're ready to speak. What do you got for us?
Yes, I was going to say the boundaries with the relationships. I have a marriage. We were almost thought of divorce, but we stayed separately for 3 years, and we are getting back together again next month.
Good for you.
Avoided divorce. And there is this, so I want to make sure I have these boundaries where I don't get back into this, toxicity in our relationship. And so this is very helpful because, can I use shield to, only attract people that are, I don't want to say non-toxic. I don't want to use a negative word there, but, something like, loving and kind, shields only to.
You need to remember two different things. One is that everybody is going to have negative emotions. This is not a bad thing that you experience them. Okay, then for me, a long time, I just thought, never have negative emotions. I want to get rid of them all. And then your shadow comes out and beats the heck out of you. Because the shadow wants to be recognized. This is probably the darker side of yourself. It's there. It's part of you. So the other thing I would say is that you can filter. Rather than a shield, why not use a filter? Okay, the filter allows you, if you've got, look at the way that they do rocks. They dump dirt on this big grate, and it goes back and forth, and the little stuff filters down through it, right? So by the time you got different levels, you got the different size gravel, you got the bigger rocks, and you got the bigger rocks, and you got the fine sand. Okay, so a filter, and I love this. This is because this is something that I hadn't thought much about before, but it makes perfect sense that if you create a filter, then you're going to receive the things that you're after. You can specify what you're after. Doesn't mean that, and I think we need to remember too that we need to be grateful for all the emotions that we have. We need to be accepting of ourselves, because what happens if you set yourself up so that you can only experience good things? Well, what about the bad stuff that you have inside of you? Are you going to create a civil war where you're always trying to tear a part of you apart? I think the answer in that is yes. So you need to look at it from a different aspect. You need to say, okay, so what is it I'm willing to do? What do I need to learn? What do I need to build up? What is it that I need to be stronger at? And maybe that's what we're trying to do, is trying to build strengthen the weakened parts of us too. I don't know what that's called.
Okay, I see. So some way become stronger than your problem, bigger than your problem.
Yeah, but if you screw up, don't beat yourself up. I got a guy I just started working with. He's an alcoholic. And we figured out, and I did a session on him. We cleared some stuff. He had an addictive heart energy, and it was, the alcohol thing really stemmed. And we dug all the way down. We found it was an issue with his dad. And at age 9 or 10, he was having problems at school. And so his dad came and picked him up, and he was like, but Dad, if you understand what I'm doing, he was just, first of all, I don't give a, and he used, expletive words about your life. He says, I don't care about you. He says, I'm just picking you up, and he says, it's up to you to fix your life. And he used words that the kid should never have heard from out of his father's. Plus, the fact that he said this about him. Now, this guy, I never was a good judge, but I think he's a good-looking guy, and I think that he's done a lot with his life, and he's also worked with psychology. Well, the reason being is because he still was trying to overcome that, and his self-medicating was drinking. That was a way of acting out against what his father was telling him, and we went in and cleared stuff. So that one first week was fine, and then I got together. He goes, I got to tell you, he says, I didn't even crave a drink. He says, we went to a bar. I went with my girlfriend, and she says, and he says, well, I don't want to drink. She goes, well, why are we going here? She says, why would we do this? And the bartender says, well, I'll give you a free drink. He says, no, he really didn't have a desire. And so the next week was pretty good the same way. And then I knew this was going to happen. He says, the next week, he says, man, I screwed up. I slipped. I got pissed off, and I drank. And I said, okay, start over. It's a thing. I said, it's going to happen. I said, you need to understand that you're not perfect in all things. You're human. But you need to have, sometimes you just beat yourself up, and that's how the opposition gets you to give up. It's not a matter how many times you go down, it's how many times you get up. So does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Yes. Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm going to run now. I have a lunch date. So have a wonderful night, everybody. And I shall see you on the next one. Thank you so much. It was really good. I've thrown a lot of notes down.
Hey, just so everybody knows, Nicola and I are figuring out how we can do an Australia run. Probably in July or August, right? Is what we're thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ricky is trying to get me over there because Dr. Nelson's going to India apparently, and and so we're trying to figure out if I should go there.
April 25 and 26, Dr. Nelson is going to be here, and I'm hoping I can also squeeze in Tom on the next day, the third day, the 27th.
So we will see, and then of course Amanda's not on here tonight, and that's the one that we are doing in Malaysia in mid-March. So maybe I'll get some globe
feel
drop.
free to tell Dr. Nelson to come to Australia too.
He hasn't come down there yet, right?
No, I don't think so. No,
I don't think he has either.
Anything for him to ever come here. Yep.
Yeah. So Ricky has somehow twisted his arm. I guess he's coming from Germany over and then come back. So we'll see. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. It's a long ways for one day. So, and then there's a couple things we have to work out, but we'll
put it out there.
But exactly right. That's exactly right. We're going to put it out there. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. And we're going to start another group of Ultimate Healers here shortly. So let me know if you're interested, and we'll get you in there. All right. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night. Good day to me.
Good night, Tom.
Good night.
Bye, Tom.